Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year here in sleepy Santa Barbara, where people's eyebrows are being raised about a magazine story that we'll get to, but we want to start with the really important stuff, which is, of course, the state of the pandemic. So Delaney, we finally moved into the elusive red tier this week. What does that mean exactly?
So that's going to mean we're opening up indoor dining. We're opening up retail more. Before, retail was only 25% capacity. Now it's 50% capacity. Gyms are able to open up indoors, movie theaters. It's just, you're seeing more economic activity.
And lots of vaccines. People are getting.
And our vaccines are ramping up finally, as rollout was kind of slow in the beginning, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Josh, how did it go with the back to school troops this week?
I don't know. Let's see. So junior high and high school were able to return because it was, like Delaney said, the red tier. So I am not done any reporting to find out sort of how the first couple of days were at all. My son, who's in high school, is virtual, so not much of a change as far as we're concerned. I guess they wanted to get a couple days in before spring break, see how it would work out before the full launch afterward.
Yeah, which is weird because next week is spring break. So Delaney, I guess, there's this emerging conventional wisdom that schools didn't really need to close. I mean, is there conversation about that at the school board, or what's the deal?
No, actually, there isn't any conversation about it, but I think there is definitely conversation among parents about this, that it should kind of, we've come to realize, and the science has developed, that schools are not super spreader places, and they're actually a really quite safer place to be during the pandemic, and that maybe we didn't have to spend this whole year with everything closed. But no, the board has not talked about that at all. I don't really see them doing so, because I don't know how productive the conversation will be. But
Nick, did you get your vaccine, Nick?
I got my first one.
I got my second one this week, so I'm.
And how are you feeling?
I feel good, except for the dots in front of my eyes and, kind of dizzy. Other than that, I'm okay.
How'd you know anything was different, Jerry?
Did you get your educator vaccine yet?
Yeah, I got my vaccine yesterday, and
First one?
First of two, and my arm hurts. It's very sore. But obviously, I don't think you're supposed to have the real symptoms until the second dose. So,
all right. And Delaney, what's good? When are the millennials?
I'm not eligible.
When are the millennials going to get a vaccine?
Well, media is eligible if they're in the next group in 1C. So it's just a matter of when that rolls out.
Yeah. And what about the variants?
Yeah, so we do have the UK variant. It was found in 2 Santa Barbara County residents. However, those 2 residents, they didn't travel overseas, and they both have already done their quarantining, so they're not spreading the variants. There's no worry about that anymore. But it is what it is. We have our first sighting of the UK variant here, and that is longer, and it's a worse form of the virus.
And do we know if the vaccine is effective against the variants or not?
No, I don't believe I don't believe that they have that answer yet.
So the other thing, Nick, what are you hearing from people from Cottage and Sansom and stuff? Are they pretty happy about the way things go? And somebody should do a piece on whoever the logistical genius was that organized the Goleta Cottage operations. It's like D-Day there. It's really quite remarkable.
They do a really smooth job, and what I hear, internally, is that people are sweating their eyeballs out, trying to make that work. So it's one of those things that looks easy, that people are working really hard to bring in lots of doctors out of retirement, lots of nurses out of retirement trying to volunteer so that they can watch you, in the 15 minutes afterwards to make sure you don't go into anaphylactic shock.
Yeah, yeah. And then Josh, you had a piece about retail needing to be teamwork or something. I guess it was a webinar of commercial real estate people. I mean, things are bad. Are they not really bad?
A Radius Group held a morning meeting where they sort of gave an update on the status of commercial office, retail, as well as apartments, and sort of the outlook for 2021. And sort of what I thought the takeaway was interesting was that Brad Froling from Radius Group, one of the commercial real estate brokers and principals, he had said that State Street can't stay like this. We've opened up about 9 blocks of State Street to pedestrian and bicycle traffic. There's no cars, and he said it's too long, it's too much, it's not sustainable. And while everybody's talking about how cool it is for these fantasy millennials to walk downtown and have a glass of wine and walk around in their skinny jeans and be so happy about how bright life is down the road, and they're saying that's just not sustainable, because what happens is, while you have a lot of outdoor dining, if you're like a retailer downtown, that doesn't really help you much. And one of the quotes that Brad Foley said, oh, by the way, skinny jeans is me, it's not Brad Foley, just for the record, Brad, if you're watching. So my point is that he said it looked like a yard sale. He said State Street looked like a yard sale. And that's pretty powerful, because, we've seen the sort of like bicycle zealots, advocates, people have really hijacked, and it's really quite disgusting, because we have the pandemic and we have businesses who are really suffering and struggling, and the bike zealots just like jumped on this, and they're like, close State Street, we've been wanting to do it forever. Now we have green stripes down the middle. We're like, oh, everybody wants to bicycle down State Street, great. Okay, not everybody wants to do that, and 2, even if everybody did want to do that, it's not fair to the retailers. And so that was sort of the thing. He suggested 3 blocks. He suggested from Brad Froling from Haley to De La Guerra, which I think is about 3, and leave those closed to cars and open it up for everybody, because they're saying, not everybody's going to want to go downtown to eat. People need to be able to go downtown to do other things as well, including.
Yeah.
But the reality though is there isn't anything really downtown but eating and drinking. Right, and there hasn't been before the COVID. I mean, where would you go shopping for a utilitarian? If you really needed a pair of clothes, it was not a utilitarian place. And I guess I get his point. I thought the yard sale line was pretty strong, but now that we're going into the red and we can have more people going inside stores to shop, assuming there's any places that are selling anything, you can go in now. And so it may be a little bit soon to say how long State Street should be pedestrian mall and how much it should be reopened. I mean, clearly State Street is already way too long as a retail corridor. And everybody agrees we can't sustain that length. So I'm sure there's going to be some truth to it where it comes to the pedestrian mall, but it just seems to me, Josh, that you really your hidden anti-bike bias is.
Oh, I don't think it's so hidden. I think Josh, do you agree with me that Nick and Rob Dayton are the ones who are responsible for the yard sale that we have downtown with the green stripes and the e-bike stations? Nick, this is all you're doing. This is your vision. You finally accomplished what you've been trying to do for all these years.
You know what? We do have this thing called sidewalks, and so pedestrians have sidewalks. There's one on each side of the street. They're wide. They can go on the sidewalk if it's so bad.
I don't mind bikes and the bike community. Obviously, families ride bikes. It's a good thing. It's just the activists who have reframed this whole discussion as being about we need bike mobility downtown, like to State Street. I mean, I thought the discussion was crosstown. Okay, now we need bikes in the middle of state. I don't, I think it's a good thing to have more mobility options. But
Well,
they're acting like the pandemic happened so that we could have more bikes down the middle of State Street.
Rob
Well,
Dayton
yeah,
is out of
it's
control.
funny.
You don't disagree with that, do you? That Rob Dayton is out of control?
Well,
Nick?
Rob Dayton's clearly out of control. He is the Wizard of Oz, but
Hey, Nick, I just want harmony here, please, just harmony. Okay?
All right, we got one more before we've been dancing around it. Hey, Delaney, this coastal commission opening, which I guess all of the tri-counties, Ventura, SLO, and Santa Barbara have to put a couple candidates forward to the governor for the Central Coast seat. And Megan Harmon and Das Williams are the two candidates. How did that come about?
They were the two candidates from our county. There was a third one. He was a Guadalupe city council member. His name is escaping me at the moment, but he also applied and didn't get it just because his track record wasn't long enough. But yeah, so Megan and Das were selected, so they'll go forward now, and they will be selected out of a greater pool because, right, it's not just Santa Barbara that's had candidates, selected candidates, so they'll be selected out of a greater pool to fill that position on the Coastal Commission, and they will at that point hold both positions. They'll be on the Coastal Commission and they'll be in their elected, locally elected position.
Nick, you agree with me, do you not, that Das is going to not get it because of his close and a relationship with Axiom, the Sacramento powerhouse lobbying thing that essentially wrote the county ordinance about cannabis and stuck it in Das's pocket? You don't think he's going to get it, do you?
well, as I remember, Axiom is very tight with Governor Newsom. So
Right,
who
and they
knows?
were the French Laundry guys.
They were the French Laundry. The flip side is Megan Harmon, who is clearly the rising star, has never actually been elected. to
She's
anything
never
yet.
gotten a single vote.
She's never gotten a single vote. She's gonna take care of fixing what ails State Street and help come up with a master plan that will take us 100 years hence. While being a council member, while being an attorney, I'm not sure. Das has got a little bit more time, it might appear.
Well, he might have, yeah, he might have more time, but I just think with the recall coming and the impact that French Laundry dinner had, famous dinner had on Gavin Newsom, that he's going to want to have a lot of distance between himself and anybody with those kinds of connections. What do you think of the argument?
Be careful, Jerry, with your accusations about Das Williams, because Nick might decide to write a 2,000-word expose of every one of your points. So I would just be careful. Think twice before you go there.
And Josh, you agree with me, then Megan Harmon is not actually an elected official and therefore should be ineligible, don't you?
No, I will not agree with you that Megan Harmon is not an elected official. I don't know. I thought you liked Megan Harmon. I don't know where all this language is coming from. It's not Megan Harmon's fault that nobody chose to challenge her when she was on the ballot. Just because the government did not want to waste a lot of money and put her name on a ballot with no opponent does not mean she's not elected.
It means she has never received a single vote. All right. So let's go to the story that everybody was talking about this week and most of us were writing about. So on early Saturday morning, in people's inboxes appeared a 4,000-word treatise from Los Angeles Magazine headlined, "In Sleepy Santa Barbara, a City Hall insider raises eyebrows." I really want to, I think they should have used a picture of Ernie Solomon right there, because Ernie has the most raised eyebrows of anybody. And then, he made a lot of accusations, essentially, basically saying that Anthony Wagner, the PIO for the Santa Barbara Police Department, was a crook. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it, but that was the thrust of it. And it kind of fell apart little by little. Delaney, I know you weren't working on it, but as a former editor, as someone who had to, determine whether something was ready, to be published or not. What was your take on this story?
Well, I mean, clearly, just factually, it needed to be fact checked. I mean, that's kind of the basics right there. And there are so many details in the story. And like you said, it started unraveling little by little that these claims weren't substantiated. It's crazy to me how it could have been published.
Yeah. Well, and why, Nick, why were people so interested in why, I mean, what was the, here's corruption going on at City Hall and all of the local reporters are ignoring it.
Well, when you live in the Garden of Eden, I think it's natural that people are trying to find the snake. And this was an article that was all about the snake. And so it was really, the genius of the piece was it tied everything together that people like to get indignant about. And it was sort of a cross-sectional indignation fest. So if you're upset about overpaid city employees, there was lots of sort of offhanded remarks about how much Paul Casey and former chief Roy Lunow were paid. If you want to get indignant about, Kathy Murillo for just about anything, there was Kathy Murillo showing up at a Black Lives Matter in a armored SWAT unit. Well, it turns out factually that wasn't true. She came driving her Honda Accord, but the SWAT unit was a good, touch. If you want to think about, big white police official, being a bully against a, Latina barber, you had that. So you had everything, but at the crux of it, there was an allegation of conflict of interest with cannabis, and cannabis is kind of the crack cocaine of indignation freaks throughout Santa Barbara. If you want to get flipped out about it, there's no shortage. And this article purported that said that Anthony Wagner was the fox guarding the hen house here, and that he was on the review committee that selected the cannabis dispensaries, and that he reviewed an application. They had his former business partner when Anthony was a land use consultant in the cannabis business down in San Diego as a partner. This is a dispensary out in Golden State Greens that was located or going to be located at State and Ontario. And that was pretty shocking news, and it caught everybody by surprise. And one of the reasons it was so surprising is that it turned out not to be at all accurate. In fact, the guy's name is Micah Anderson, and had Micah Anderson been a partner there, it would have been a huge conflict.
Well, he was a former business partner of Anthony Wagner's.
Former business partner of Anthony Wagner. Guess what? Micah Anderson had nothing to do with it. He was not in a partnership with Golden State Greens in any way, shape, or form. Now, there is some documentation that he was trying to be in business with Golden State Greens in Pasadena a year after all this happened. But even then, if you read, you don't even have to go to the fine print. You just go to the big print a few pages in, and you realize it's not the case. But if you look at the face page, you might be confused and you might think that.
Yeah, well, Josh, Nick did a pretty big takedown on it. And you were on social media defending him against accusations that he was just upset that he'd been scooped in his own town. And of course, to me, the biggest scandal in the piece, which was not new, was that this marijuana license on upper state never opened. I mean, they never opened a shop, but then they turned around and flipped the license for, I guess, a couple $1 million profit. And Josh, you had reported on that last summer, and I looked in vain for any credit you received in the piece for picking up on that. But give me your take on the piece overall. And then, what about this issue about flipping the license? Is the city going to do anything to change the ordinance?
Well, regarding the piece, I thought it was a good first start. It was sort of like half of it was accurate. But what bothered me about the story was really the reaction to it. It's I get where Nick is coming from, because this idea that this person who's not from here came in and parachuted and did this investigative piece, believe me, if that happens, we would all tip our hat to that journalist. When the LA Times did their thing on Doss Williams, it's like, that's impressive. Good job. Good work. Okay. We journalists, we don't care. Like great job if you could go in here and scoop us. But that wasn't the case with this story. This story was made a bunch of assertions. And I don't know if Anthony, I'm not going to defend Anthony. I'm not going to defend the city of Santa Barbara. I don't know. Okay. But what I do know is those assertions I couldn't prove when I was being a reporter trying to research those. I took probably all the same steps that the reporter for LA Mag did, but I stopped, because once I got to the point where I don't have a document to show this, or I don't have a source to show it, I can't report it. It's just basic. And, it's just kind of offensive that there are people out in the community who are saying, oh, Nick Welsh doesn't do investigative journalism. I mean, Delaney does investigative journalism all the time on the school board. Nick does investigative journalism. Tyler Hayden does investigative journalism. Gianna Magnoli, Josh Molina, we all do investigative journalism. But what happens is that these people just read a headline, they scan, and they look for what they want to see, and they come to a conclusion, and they're like, oh, well, why couldn't the local people do that? It's like, well, we didn't do that because we're good reporters, and we decided that there was other stuff we were doing. And when we approached that, we knew to say no. And that's such a big part of journalism. We all in this room, we know saying no is just as important as pursuing a story. In fact, we say no to more stories than we publish. I think it was a piece that the anti-government people jumped on. You hate Doss Williams, you found a reason to love that piece. You hate the city of Santa Barbara, you found a reason to love that piece. Everybody who's had a grudge against Kathy Murillo, you found a reason to love that piece. And that is not right, because that piece, and again, I'm not going to defend Anthony or the city. I don't know what the real core truth is. All I know is what I can report. And what I can report, I can't prove those things that story asserted. And it's just very frustrating that people don't take the time. Delaney and I have talked about this.
Confirmation
Media illiteracy is so high. It's so sad that adult professional working people can just read a headline and come to a conclusion without critically thinking. And that's why that's what I took from it. And I applauded Nick. Nick goes out there and writes that piece. He's not being bitter, right, at all. He's just, it's brave for him to do that, because he knows full hand the blowback he's going to get by doing it.
What were you going to say, Nick?
Well, I was going to say, Josh was putting his finger on something there. What was dispiriting to me was the number of people who, in fact, are media savvy, who know, what goes into a newspaper, but who were so willing to be, oh my God, can you believe this is happening here in Santa Barbara anyway? I think in some ways, the bigger question is it, why are so many people so quick to believe the worst about City Hall? And, I think part of it is, what's going on with the people, but I think also part of it is that City Hall has not really made people feel like, oh my God, this couldn't happen here. The sort of ongoing concern, who's minding the store, is somebody asleep at the switch, or how many people are asleep at the switch? And there's such a sense of fragmentation that people, it was easy for people to believe the worst. And I think if I was in a position of leadership over there, I would be, obviously the inaccuracies of reporting, and I think your point of saying no is really a good one. But I think that they're gonna have to ask themselves, why were so many people so quick to believe the worst about us and try to figure out what to do about that?
Yeah. All right. So just to recap where we are. So Anthony Wagner has been placed on paid administrative leave while the acting police chief, Barney Malakian, contracts with a third-party investigative firm to look into these allegations. And the city now has put out a statement yesterday, kind of more or less defending the sale of this lease, which was apparently countenanced by the language of the ordinance, which we should note was passed by the previous city council, not the current city council. You know, the salaries, you know, there's a whole context that you have to look at per se. He's going to throw somebody's salary out. These are all based on comparable salaries in similar locations. There's a whole infrastructure about that, which was kind of let go. And meanwhile, I guess the magazine has run a correction, or at least one correction. And Anthony has sent a demand for a retraction letter with 34 clauses in it as causes of action. Nick, you talked to the editor of the magazine. What did you get from that?
Well, when I talked to him, I mean, it was, you know, he was just trying to figure out what to do next, and you know what he thought, you know, what the facts were. So he was just checking out what, you know, what he thought the facts were, and he hadn't decided yet exactly which way he was going. Obviously, the magazine decided that they needed to retract the core allegation in there, that as Micah Anderson was somehow involved with the dispensary. You know, I'm not sure where it goes from here after that.
And we should also point out that Mitchell Kriegman, the author who's living in Portugal, defends his work and says he made every effort to contact people, which is certainly, I think, in question. So there it is. And I think we'll leave it there and raise our eyebrows about something else over the weekend. Delaney, go out and get a vaccine somehow. You need to get on that list. And you other guys, stay healthy and hang in there. It was a difficult week, I have to say. There was a
Well, Jerry, if you know, since I'm handing out praise, honestly, you jumped on it. You had an interview with Mitchell. You wrote about it. You were the first one. And, you know, you were able to start putting the pieces together first in terms of some of the accuracies and inaccuracies in a very journalistic way. And so I know you put a lot of time into it too, but I mean, you played a big role here in sort of putting all this in context.
Well, thanks. I mean, you know, the thing about it is it says he's describing Santa Barbara and he says it's a Gentile community, meaning genteel. And yeah, you know, that's kind of funny and we can laugh about it, but it's in the second sentence of the story. So, you know, once you see something like that, it kind of raises a red flag, and then you get your armored SWAT vehicles and other things running through it. Just
it's the old thing. If you misspell a name or you can't get the basic details, the public will, and they have a right, and they should question every other detail in that story. If you can't get this right, how can we trust the really important?
But the reality is Santa Barbara is a Gentile community. So he got that right.
That's what Jana Zimmer said. She said, boy, you're not kidding. on social media. And also, I think, you know, as long as we're handing out hugs and kisses, you know, Gwen Lurie over at the Montecito Journal, who commissioned the piece, passed on it because she didn't think it was ready for print. So it was taken elsewhere. So kudos to her on that. And also Nick Scow, who worked on the story and has a pretty good yarn this week too.
You know, I feel bad for Mitchell because he's not a journalist, and he needed help. You know, he needed someone to like be an editor and push it and keep it going and say, did this, did you do this, did you do this, did you not do that, all that whole process. Maybe he got it, maybe he did it, I don't know. But I know as somebody who's been a young reporter, or somebody who's helped other reporters, you have to literally ask, can I prove this on
Line
every
by-
allegation
and,
of fact? And
when
if
you
you
go-
can't, take it out.
I mean, the story literally says that Anthony compares Anthony to a character in one of the Godfather movies. Now what is that? I mean, if you're going to go after somebody like that and basically, say they're corrupt, you got to make every effort. You got to call them. You got to send a registered letter with your everything. You can't just.
And the thing about Anthony is, Anthony is probably such a hyper accessible person to the media that, if you can't get an interview with him, that's kind of begs belief.
Yeah.
He would definitely, he would have shown up with his big binder and said, hey, let me take you through it.
I'm walking down State Street, I turn around, Anthony Wagner's behind me, so he's not hard to find. That's no joke. This guy's everywhere, so he's not hard to find.
Well, Tom Widrow said he was over near Costco the other day when you were sitting with Anthony, and he saw the two of you there as well. So,
Wow, Tom, thanks, appreciate that.
he's nothing if not accessible. All right, thanks, Delaney. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Josh. Stay safe. We'll see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right, thank you.